What's the best you fucked with the wrong person moment you ever seen? Story 1. Didn't witness this one personally, and I have tried to hunt down the footage online for years with no success. But about 30 years ago I saw one of those true crime shows with one of the most hilarious wrong time, wrong place bits of security cam footage I'd ever seen in my life. The security footage shows this old lady walking along the sidewalk when a purse snatcher comes along and tries to grab her bag. She wrestles with him for a few seconds as he tries to yard this thing off her arm. Unfortunately, this guy didn't have the greatest situational awareness because he didn't notice that the spot he'd chosen to commit this crime was right outside of a martial arts school, with a class in session. About 5 seconds after he grabs her and starts wrestling with her, the double doors to the school fly open and a veritable tide of martial arts students start streaming out the door right towards this guy. At least 25 people were coming outside to show this guy what for. The security camera captures this absolutely fantastic moment of realization. Pure horror where the guy realizes what he's done, immediately releases the purse, and turns to run. He makes it about 2 steps before he's tackled by the mob and buried under a tide of white doogie. There were fists and knees flying, and I swear I saw students pulling one another off of this guy so they could get a turn. But that's probably my memory adding some fanciful details. They eventually showed a mugshot of the guy afterwards, and the poor guy looked like he'd been sucked into a grain thresher. It was magnificent. Story 2. I was in college physics 2 class. The professor was a skinny nerd who looked like a 40-year-old Shaggy from Scooby-Doo minus the height. He sounded like Tony Hawk and skateboarded to class. Deaf stoner vibes, a little soft-spoken. Good teacher though. He always gave plenty of extra office hours if you had questions, and when he said a question was gonna be on the test, it always was. Despite that, the class was still pretty hard, just a lot of material jammed into each test. So we're taking an exam, and it's the 3rd exam of the semester. Super quiet in the room. Suddenly we hear a commotion from the back of class. Some roided out looking dude in a cut up workout t-shirt. You know, the ones where they cut the sleeves and the whole sides of the shirt off so you can see everything. Has slammed his desk back into a couple of other students' desks and stands up and yells, "What the frick is this? This test is fricking bullcrap," while walking to the front of the room with his backpack slung around his shoulder still open. He's walking straight towards the professor, who has been standing at the front podium looking at his laptop the whole time. The student is easily a full foot taller than the professor. He gets in the professor's face panting and throws his test at him. The test bounces off his chest and he looks the student straight in the eye and without missing a beat says, "Nah man, the test isn't bullcrap. Yourebullcrap. Now get the frick out of my class and don't come back. You're done for the semester." The guy's eyes got huge and he looks up at the class, who are all staring at the situation with oh crap looks on their faces. Some people are laughing quietly. He can totally tell no one has his back, and he just runs out of the room like a bee. Everyone is kind of looking at each other like, "Did you see that?" and murmuring to themselves. The professor just sighs and picks up the test on the floor and quietly tells everyone to come on guys, get back to work. Story 3. I was visiting a girl at her college when we got split up, and I saw an old buddy from HS. We were getting hammered, reconnecting about the old days, and going from party to party. Important note, he looks goofy and gangly as frick. We're both 61, but I'm 235 and often mistaken for a Marine, and he's 170 and gangly as frick. 4 bros wanted to start crap and my buddy stepped in front of me. I'm basically a wet bee, and tried his best to tell the guys to move along and that we shouldn't do this. That lasted for about 60 seconds before one of the 4 guys full on went for it and threw a looping, drunken haymaker. Now, it had totally slipped my mind that my old buddy, who I hadn't seen in 3 years, had black belts in TKD, judo, and was a pretty elite boxer in high school. He didn't do MMA, he was just a complete sicko at all 3 disciplines. I don't know how I can describe just how Jackie Chan drunken master he went on these guys. Again, completely hammered. He ducked the haymaker and landed an uppercut, turned and gave a Muay Thai front kick to the second guy's solar plexus, took a big step and slid in, closing the distance to the 3rd guy and hip tossed him, knocking the wind out of him. And, from the finish of the toss looking down, did a spinning back elbow on the 4th guy's nose. It was bang bang bang. He caught his balance and stumbled a little bit and was like, a bunch of fricking sluts," turned to me and said, "All right, let's GTFO of here." I'll never forget it. It was amazing. Sam, you're a legend. Hey guys, are you enjoying the video? If so, please like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. Anyways, back to the stories. Story 4. Literally the most instant, brutal beatdown I've ever seen was on train in Perth, Australia. I was coming back from work with a coworker and we heard panicked shouts and thought that someone on the train had a knife. The carriage door opened and a worried-looking black guy in security clothing runs through. I could hear this really rough-sounding Aussie voice calling this guy a MG dog, shouting after him. The owner of the voice follows him into the carriage and it's pretty obvious he's off his head on meth. The black guy turns around, midway up the carriage, and starts bouncing on the balls of his feet, side on, with his hands down. I've dabbled in martial arts and that definitely looked like a karate stance. The meth head rushes him whilst shouting more racism. The black guy springs forward at the last moment and the two collide. The fight was over as soon as it started. The meth head instantly had his knee hyperextended with a low kick. He gets caught clean with 2 more punches and then thrown into some vacant seats and restrained. It was literally over in under 2 seconds. The meth head's leg was literally broken in half and flapping around. His head was split from hitting some metal work and his nose broken from the punches. I've never seen anything like it. Story 5. Went to high school in the 90s. At the time, I'd say the general attitude towards gay people that they were okay in theory, but anybody who was out, or suspected to be, would be bullied. Note, I'm not saying this was my attitude, just the general attitude. Basically, they're fine, I just don't want them near me. We had this one kid. I don't know if he was actually gay, but if Hollywood from the movie Mannequin was a high school student in the 90 seconds, it would be him. Despite what I just said about the general attitude of my school, this kid managed not to get any grief about it, just whispers. One day, walking down the hall, he bumped into another kid, accident. The other kid said something along the lines of "watch yourself, fought." The gay kid, or possibly not gay, said "excuse me," in what sounded like 2 octaves below his normal voice, grabbed the other kid, and threw him into the window. It would have been through the window, but we had those windows that had chicken wire running through it, so it just sort of spider-webbed and dented. Story 6. The beatdown a high school friend named Mike put on this annoying idiot one day. Just to give you an idea of the kind of prick was, you could always tell when he was about to throw a punch because the first thing he'd do would be to look around to make sure the teacher was looking the other way. He'd try to be the tough guy around school, but he never went after the big kids or the ones who he knew had some martial arts training. One day Crapface decides Mike is his next target, probably because he knew Mike wouldn't fight back despite being about a foot taller than Crapface. He was right about Mike not fighting back though, since the guy was a real gentle giant. Anyway, Crapface tries to fight Mike, who doesn't fight back except to block a few punches, which was fairly easy because Crapface wasn't exactly a great fighter. Teacher finally breaks the fight up, and because of our school's idiotic rules on fighting, both get a 3-day suspension. Fast forward to a few weeks later when Crapface decides to frick with Mike again. He throws another couple of weak punches when all of a sudden Mike grabs him by the neck with one hand, fricking clocks him in the nose with the other hand, before finally, and I crap you not, straight up launching him through a plate glass window. It's only by the grace of the great Jew zombie that Crapface didn't slice open an artery going through the window. To quote Mike, "If I'm going to get suspended anyway, might as well make it worth it." He did get suspended for a while, I remember, but thanks to his dad threatening to bury the school in lawsuits, he didn't get expelled. Story 7. My grandmother never remarried in her life, but she did eventually settle down with a partner and spend their lives together. After he passed, my grandmother sat down and told me probably the coolest story ever about him. I'll refer to him as Al from now on. Before he met my grandma, Al had been married for years, had a wife and a family, worked almost his entire life in the mines. After his daughters had grown and moved, Al's wife decided she was going to step out on him. She got caught and they filed for divorce. Al didn't have a very good lawyer and lost his shirt in the settlement. She got the house, land, and everything that came with it. He got his old truck and a pompous "go frick yourself." Al was not having it. He was a dedicated man, loved her his whole life, provided for her and his daughters, and by all accounts was a stand-up guy. He wasn't going to let this stand. The night before he was to vacate the home and hand over the keys, he paid a visit to his workplace, grabbed some explosives, lined them through the house, and blew the entire fricking thing straight to hell along with every worldly possession in it. Al got just shy of 2 years and earned the nickname Dynamite Al. When she showed up the next day, he put the keys to the truck in her hand and told her it was all hers. If she wanted the shirt off his back, she'd have to pick it up at the police station. Story 8. My current boyfriend used to work for the government. He knows how to mentally and physically frick people up, but he doesn't broadcast the fact that he would probably beat most people in a fight. About 6 months ago, we were having drinking games at our house. Our roommate at the time, an idiot, decided to invite my ex-boyfriend, an abusive idiot. My current boyfriend was present during the last part of my ex's and my relationship, so he saw that he wasn't good to me, And of course I told him things that he did while we were dating. I should also mention, my BF is 6'4" and in shape. X is like 5'7" and probably hasn't done a push-up within a year, yet is weirdly overconfident that he would win any fight he got into. So basically, X takes one step inside before BF tells him he's not welcome and need to leave. Cocky X argues that he was invited, so he's going to stay. BF takes him by the shoulder and practically drags him outside and up the stairs. We live in a basement apartment. I don't know what happened up there, but there was no commotion or anything, and BF came back down within a couple of minutes. Since, I have not heard one word from X and he has blocked both me and BF on all social media. Also, after the roommate that invited him moved out, we heard a lot more stuff come out that he had done against us and our friends. So he's lucky he moved town and hasn't come back since. Story 9. Huge house party. Like 50 plus people, 20-somethings, lots of drinking. Friend of a friend of a friend is trash drunk and starts getting handsy with the ladies there. He corners one girl in the laundry room. She manages to shove by him and run out to the driveway to tell a few of us that were circled around with the host. Our friend D was a pretty unintimidating guy. Baggy clothes, big t-shirt, so when he went to tell the guy to leave, the handsy drunk started yelling something along the lines of, "Yeah, frickin' make me leave." D was a cool cat, so he kept his head, tried walk him out. They got out to the yard and then Hansi shoved him. D smiled a big grin. What very few people at that party knew, including Hansi, was that D had water in his red Solo cup. Dude never drank, never smoked, was completely sober and had been doing MMA training all summer. Hansi was so outmatched in the fight that D started toying with him like a cat. At one point D took off his own hat and put it on Hansi's head. Just showboating. Hansi tried to get up and D roundhouse kicked him into the outside of the house. Then everyone decided that enough was enough. We found out who brought him and got them to take him home. Story 10. I was at the club having a drink. Gay bar, should be clarified. While being myself sitting by the bar having a Canadian club and dry, a dude walks in. About 19 years old. Very good looking. Like tall and skinny, but you could tell he puts work into how he dresses and carries himself one place to another. Very attractive and slick. Anyway, he comes by me, sits down next to me after talking to his mate outside. He starts talking to me and we have a decent conversation about work and small talk. Very polite and nice guy. We talk for hours and hours and a few guys come up to him and try talk to him and get his number. He denies all of them. I haven't got his number yet. I ask for it in a joke because I'm drunk and stupid. He says sure. He gets cut off because an older gentleman, 50, comes over and sits next to him and starts talking. I'm just sitting here hearing this. The older male starts talking to him and they start talking and all that for about 10 minutes and the older gentleman talks about how much money he has and all that. Older male offers to buy him a drink. I go to the toilet and come back. The older male buys him a Coke because the 19-year-old says he's not drinking. The older male talks about money and how he expects that the 19-year-old is poor and can't buy what he wants. I start to walk outside and the 19-year-old follows me. The older guy then says to him as he's leaving, "You might look good, but you'd look better with me." The older guy follows us out. The 19-year-old gets a call for about 4 minutes. He ends the call, pulls out a black card with his number on it in the center. He walks over to his car, Mercedes. The older guy yells in jealousy, or some rude random stuff along the lines of "slimy dog, fought." The 19-year-old walks back to the older man and puts his hand up in a waving motion, just like a simple flick in the air. Behind the older guy, 3 bouncers approached and escorted the older guy out of the area. I was surprised and I asked how. He said connections, then followed up with "call me sometime." I'm like, yo, WTF, is this a movie? Story 11. My local water company billed me for more water than could be pushed through a 1.5 supply line in a single billing period. They refused to investigate, said I must have a leak, and then stonewalled me. I did my own private investigation, installed my own secondary meter to measure actual usage, obtained records from their water supplier, and then FOIA their billing record, and proved that they were billing for 20% more gallons than they were purchasing. I was able to eventually prove that their billing system had a defect which often resulted in staggeringly wrong meter readings being entered, and that when they fixed it, the next meter reading would be non-sequential and create a huge anomaly in the amount billed. Finally, using additional FOIA requests, I was able to execute the double tap to find the employees engaged in a cover-up once the issue had been revealed, and then further, discussing internally how to avoid giving me access to records, which I didn't know existed, that would further expose their wrongdoing. In the process, I also uncovered unrelated expense reimbursement fraud by several employees, including the site director, the highest level employee at this location. He claimed that he personally drove out and inspected my meter and that he had brought a fairly large piece of equipment to verify its accuracy, but my home security camera didn't verify his story. After I requested and received the work vehicle mileage logs, and after I discovered they had GPS tracking in them, and after I received payroll records, all from FOIA requests, I was able to piece together that some employees were claiming they did company business in personal vehicles when they were short on trucks, and then claimed mileage reimbursement. Story 12. A man did have a taekwondo club that he closed a year before. He was national champion a few years ago this incident. He had won a few championships before that too. He was one of the highest ranked in Krav Maga in our country. He was a mean MF. He did things to his students that was borderline assault. The things did have a purpose, but the risk of serious or permanent damage a student was high. He was forced to close his club due to PPL get injured by him, and PPL did not like his dangerous teaching ways. One day I did read the morning paper and saw following. Police was called to a shady part of the town to a robbery attempt. 3 men was taken into ICU with several broken bones, 1 with puncture lung, and all 3 has fractured skull bones. It is at the time unknown if 2 of them will survive. 2 men was taken to the emergency room for several broken bones, and 1 of them was suspected to have a broken knee. 1 man was released after police interrogation, 1 with minor scratches. So when I did get to my TKD, the other one in town, practice, I spoke with the other guys about it. 2 PPL that have just changed Mean MF TKD Club Tar was related to Mean MF. Apparently 5 men tried to rob Mean MF when he was on his way home from training Krav Maga. He did have some minor cuts on his knuckles after fighting. During the interrogation they figure it out he was the one they tried to rob. After match, if I recall correctly, 1 died in ICU. 1 did sustain very serious brain damage, can walk and somewhat talk, but basically is like a 3-4 years old. 1 did got his knee damaged beyond repair and forced to use crutches. The others did recovered almost fully. They were in the hospital for months. That is what I call you fricked with the wrong person. Hey guys, just found out you watched till the end. That is awesome. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories.